everyone. Welcome to Crime in Court. This is the state's case, part 44 of California versus Erik and Lyle Menendez on trial for the homicides of their parents, Kitty and Jose. This is their retrial. First trial was recorded and aired via Court TV. We restreamed it, we watched it together. Now we are reading the transcript of the second trial. First trial ended in a mistrial for the both of them, and we are almost completed with the state's case. We're in the middle of Dr. Roger McCarthy's testimony. He's the mechanical engineer testifying to bodily injuries, which makes no sense. He's not qualified to do that. So there's that. He's kind of getting beat up on cross by Leslie. He's being very difficult. He's being evasive with his answers. He doesn't want to answer anything. So it's difficult to get through it, but we're here and we're reading through. Um, and just fair warning, he's still on the stand for 2 more days. So we are now going to begin Thursday, November 16th. Fair warning, he's going to be on the stand all day the 16th, all day the 17th, and then very briefly on the following day. I think it's the 18th. I don't know if it's oh, no, it would be Monday. So I don't know, whatever the date is. So here we are. We're continuing on. Please hit the like button. Forgot to say that. Also subscribe, do the YouTube things, please. Um, I'm gonna read through this whole trial. As you can see, there was it started out polling people what they wanted, and everybody seemed to want to hear everything. So we're just gonna read through the entire thing because why not? We have the script. So here we are. We're almost done with the state's case. I do believe that the defendant's case is going to be much better, just interesting wise, because I find it a more interesting topic than this diagram was, put into evidence and all this crap that the state has to do, which is kind of boring. But anyways, let's continue. We are on, like I said, Thursday, November 16th. The court says, all right, the defendants are present. All counsel are present. Let's have the jury out. The jury enters the courtroom and the following proceedings are held. The court says, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I understand the lawyers are going to bring in a large amount of exhibits next week for you. I wonder if anyone's thought of how you're going to deal with all of these in the jury room. All right, we'll now resume with cross-examination. So I think it was just he wanted to throw that idea out there so that they could discuss it. All right, so cross-examination begins. Dr. Roger McCarthy's on the stand, and Ms. Abramson will be doing the questions for Erik's defense right now. I believe, Dr. McCarthy, I was asking you about what in your mind of the arm injuries, the upper arm injuries to Mr. Menendez, which one did you believe was higher up on the arm? The one that you're seeing in that photograph on 295, which is the medial one, or the one that's on the opposite side of the arm, which is the lateral one. I don't think we ever solved that. And what I should have done last night was look again at the photos, but my recollection as I sit here was that the lateral one is higher than the medial one. So that if you look at 1A, then, first of all, you have already told us that 1A doesn't purport to show the wound on the upper arm. Is that correct? No, I believe it does, but I guess, in terms of the medical discussion, I think the pellet indications at the elbow are clearly entry wounds, and I believe the wound above it, was also part of the same shot. But as you have just indicated, the wound on the other side of the arm is higher up on the arm than the one on the inner side of the arm that's near the pellet defects, correct? My recollection is it's not greatly, but oh wait, my recollection is a little. It's not greatly, but as we discussed, the arm is broken and slight deflection of the path of the pellets wouldn't surprise me. Well, whether it's deflection or not, the exit wound is higher. Before we're going to take that to the bank, like I said in the beginning, I'd like to look at the photos again, but that's my recollection. You have had the photos for almost a year, haven't you? I have had all 800 for almost a year, correct? Not all photos show the bodies or the den where the shooting occurred, correct? That's correct. About 180 of them reflect the bodies and the den where the shooting occurred, correct? Correct. In fact, anatomically speaking, the wounds to his upper arm, even on this diagram, they're about 3 inches on the diagram higher than the green line that you put there, correct? I'm not comfortable with 3 inches. If you look at the defects, they're right in the elbow. Is that a no? I'm not comfortable with 3 inches. Oh, okay, buddy. Not comfortable with a lot of things. And this is going to be the way that he answers most things. I'm not comfortable with stating that. Well, but isn't that what your report says, sir? No. So he just argues with everything. She says, I'm not talking about the individual defects I am talking about, and they're not right in the elbow. According to Dr. Lawrence, they're above the elbow. Do you remember that testimony? No, I guess I don't. Excuse me, I don't recall him testifying to that. Excuse me. In any event, based on the measurements and based on just visualizing this, you can see Mr. Menendez's armpit in the upper left photo in 295, can't you? That's an armpit? Yes. And you can see this defect right below the armpit. It depends on the upper arm between the elbow and armpit. I don't think that picture goes up to the armpit. Closer to the armpit than the elbow, however. And I guess that's what I am uncomfortable about. If you refer to the, so you don't know. Is that the answer? No, I don't know. I have it diagrammed, and that's what I want to refer to. The court says, okay, Ms. Abramson, why don't you get back to the podium, please? Ms. Abramson says, because I can't point to the diagram from there. The court says, and let's not use that pointer as you're doing it. You tend to use it as an exclamation point. Let's just use it to point at things. Ms. Abramson says, I was pointing at things. The court says, why don't you leave it there at the diagram? Oh my God. Oh my God. Okay. The witness says, I would characterize it as closer to the elbow. You would? I have a diagram if you want. Did you hear Dr. Golden's 1995 supplement, or read Dr. Golden's 1995 supplement? Yes. And doesn't he place it 9 inches below it? Well, let me get it exactly. Now, he describes the entrance wound as what you're calling the exit, correct? I believe so. And he says the entrance wound is approximately 6 to 7 inches below the top of the right shoulder. Do you remember that? Yeah. And he has the exit wound 9 to 14 inches below the top of the right shoulder, correct? Much closer to the elbow than the armpit. Well, the top of it is 9 inches from the top of the shoulder, correct? Correct. 9 inches from the top of the shoulder and 14 inches puts it almost down to the elbow. Well, the wound is very large, is it not? Understood, but definitely, I don't know why I have a frog in my throat today. Definitely closer to the elbow and the armpit, which is where we started. That's an example of anything you say on the record is going to be on the record. So if you like had something in your throat and you had to clear it and said, I don't know why I have a frog in my throat, it's going to go in the record for people 30 plus years later to read it. So just saying. I just think that's funny. All right, Miss Abramson says, however, the line you have drawn on 1A is a line that goes downward, correct? Again, there is a slight angularity downward in the diagram in the rigid position they're sitting in. That's why I have taken pains to point that out within the accuracy of the diagrams, I mean. Your Honor, I would move to strike everything beyond the description of the line as non-responsive. The court says, let's hear the answer again. That's like annoying because you want it stricken and here you are reading it again. So it's like it goes into the jury's mind again. Ms. Abramson says that was the question. The court says, let's hear the answer. That was read. The court says everything is stricken, starting with that's why everything else will stand. Ms. Abramson says, now, with the fixed post that you chose to illustrate in shot 1A, Dr. McCarthy, in order to shoot what you call the exit wound higher up on Mr. Menendez's right arm, the line would have to go upward and to the left rather than downward. Isn't that true? No. He says no to like all of her questions and often doesn't give an answer. So you're saying the line where it is now shows the exit wound, as you call it, higher up on the arm than the exit, than the entrance wound. Is that what you're saying? The line as it's drawn right now? Yeah. You probably could argue there is a slight bias to the other way in the diagram as it is drawn. So, my last question was correct. Is that right? No. You wouldn't have to change the angle of the shot. You could just rotate the body slightly, the arm, as as I was doing yesterday. The question is based on the figures being in the exact position you chose to place them in forming illustration 1. Do you understand? Do you remember that part? I don't remember you saying that in the question, but if you freeze the figures, you have to change the angle of the shot. It would have to go upward, correct? If you freeze the figures, yes. And if you did go higher, it would miss her left breast entirely, correct? Again, if she were seated higher, no, but with the figures shown as they are, yes. Thank you. Now, I think we were talking yesterday about Dr. Lawrence and his basic position that he does not believe those two wounds or the two wounds of Mr. Menendez's right arm as visualized on 295 were necessarily part of the same shot. Do you remember our discussion about that yesterday? I recall our discussion. I wouldn't agree with your basic position characterization. Of course he wouldn't, because he disagrees with her about everything. Well, let me ask you this. If only the defects that the individual pellet defects that you say are in the elbow area were involved in shot 1A and not the upper arm were involved in that shot, then you can't explain the left breast injuries with a trajectory, correct? No, I think Dr. Lawrence even was comfortable with a left breast injury. That's not what I asked you. Dr. Lawrence indicated he believed the left breast was connected to the left elbow, correct? Yes. But you're showing the left breast as being a wound that's produced by passage of pellets through his right arm, correct? The diagram does go through his right arm, yes. And that's what you've testified to on direct, that you thought all these wounds were in the or were in a straight line and connected, right? Yes. You said the geometry led to a straight line, correct? Yes. So if the right upper arm is not involved, well, first of all, the pellet defects on the inner elbow, do you know if they exited? My recollection is that the x-rays show that the pellet count in the elbow is pretty close to the defect count. I would have to blow it up to see. So is that a no? They did not exit? It doesn't appear that most of them exited. It's just that when you talk about that, you're talking about a pellet count plus or minus 1 or 2. But most of them, I believe, stayed in the elbow. Fine. So they didn't pass through his arm into her breast. That's correct. I don't believe they did. I'm still confused with his testimony. He's all over the place. He cannot stick to a straight theory. So you needed the upper wound to have passed through his arm into her breast, correct? I believe that's what happened, but I don't need that. You need it to justify the diagram, correct? No, as you indicated, the pellet pattern could have caught his elbow partially, and then the remainder hit her breast. But then you would have to make a big X over the diagram showing the pellets that went into his right arm that went into her left breast. Oh, no, this is the same shot, he says. Dr. McCarthy, if my eyes don't deceive me, it is meant to. Mr. Khan says, objection, argumentative, object to the form of the question. She didn't even finish it, but okay. Court says, rephrase the question. Ms. Abramson says, Dr. McCarthy, that line is shown in such a way, is it not, to show pellets going through his arm and into her breast, correct? That's how it's drawn. That's how it's drawn. I believe Mr. Khan says, Your Honor, may the witness finish his answer. The court says, yes, you may answer the question. The witness says, I believe that's what happened, but the diagram is correct. If you don't believe that, because I think maybe I'm wrong, it's uncontroverted that some of the indications hit his right arm, and if the remainder of the pellets went by the arm, I didn't show the diameter of the spread at the time with the green line. That is, the directionality and the connection. Word salad. We're talking about if the right arm is not involved in a shot that connects his left elbow with her left breast, then the diagram is not correct. Is that right? If the right arm is not involved in any way, you are correct. Even if the right arm is involved for the inner defects, they don't pass through to her breast, correct? They do not. So the diagram is wrong in showing passage to the breast. If the upper arm is not involved, isn't that correct? No. Fine. You have answered the question. The court says, wait, let him answer the question. The witness says, I meant to indicate the connection of the geometry of the shot. I didn't try to show by the diameter of the green bar the full extent of the pellet spread. The pellets that struck the elbow, I believe, as you indicated, were absorbed by the elbow. The pellets could have come by his elbow and into her breast. The diagram is correct in either way. But if they went through the arm, they would have been low velocity, which would explain why they didn't penetrate very far into the chest. Is that correct? That is correct, ma'am. Now, do you believe, Dr. McCarthy, that this notion that you have that the two decedents were seated and that the first shot came from Mr. Menendez's left is uncontroverted in this case? No, not that, I guess. I just was thinking about the connection of the three wounds. But if it's uncontroverted, that's all right. Do you think the connection of the wounds is uncontroverted? I didn't think Dr. Lawrence was uncomfortable with the connection of those three wounds. Do you think Dr. Lawrence was the defense's witness? No, I didn't mean it in that sense. And you understand the defense is calling witnesses on all these points, don't you? Mr. Khan says objection, calls for speculation and hearsay, sustained. Well, she has a good point because, like, you're saying it's uncontroverted, but we have experts that disagree with what the state's saying. So it's not uncontroverted. And you saying that, I think she makes a good point, even though it got sustained. Ms. Abramson says, now, would you characterize, based on your familiarity and your having fired guns in your own home range over the years, would you characterize the pellet pattern on her left breast as a pattern showing individual distribution of pellets? Objection, vague. The court says, do you understand the question? Witness says, I'm not sure. The court says, well, let's try to rephrase it then. Let's back up. Can we agree, Dr. McCarthy, that at a certain distance, whatever it may be, pellets fired by a shotgun spread? Yes. And the farther away, the larger the spread, generally speaking. Yes. And doesn't that pattern on her left breast denote spread? Yes. And you can't tell us at what distance. Is that correct? That's correct. What is the size of that spread? Did you ever measure it? No, I did not attempt to characterize it numerically. Would fair to say it's wider than any spread you obtained using the Fiachi ammunition in your test patterns. It could be, but I would have to measure it to answer your question. But upon eyeballing it, it doesn't appear to be wider than those, does it? It does appear to be wider than those, does it not? Perhaps your eye is more confident than mine. What kind of an answer is that? Do we have a picture of the breast here? Yes. I mean, I am not comfortable with that. It may be, but it wouldn't be a whole lot. But it's wide, correct? It's a distribution. It is a pattern I am uncomfortable with wide. And how far away from that breast do you opine his right arm was at the moment when the pellets are escaping his right arm, are, as you have diagrammed them, and entering her left breast? I think reasonably close. Close. So in order for that large pattern to be imprinted on her left breast, it had to come out that way from his right arm. Isn't that true? It didn't have to come out in a geometry. What? But it had to come out with angularity to the pattern. Yes. I don't even know what that means. Do you think the jury knows what that means? Yeah, he just likes to use big words and try to confuse. It had to come out, either that spread itself or something must have recone shaped it. Is that what you're saying? Something had to. If it didn't come out in that geometry, the femur, not the femur, his arm, that was shattered by that shot opened the shot pattern up. Because in your estimation for the shot, I'm sorry, humerus, not femur, it had to be, or it had to have entered in the pattern with that big defect in the upper arm. The shot had to come in fairly close together. Isn't that true? I'm sorry, that sounds like a clear question. I was thinking, I'm sorry. If the femur, now she's saying femur, if the humerus spread the shot, then I assume, he says humerus, I think is up here. If the humerus spread the shot, then I detect you're assuming that the shot was closer together before it broke the bone. Is that right? If it, yes, that's true logically. And based on the appearance of that upper arm defect that you are calling an entry, it appears that the shot, since it tore out the whole center there is no individual holes with skin in between. That shot, or that the shot was bunched together when it went through that arm. At the front, yes. True, however, there is a very large spread also on the left elbow. Isn't that true? But there are individual defects. Yes, they are shown as spread. Now, do you believe, Dr. McCarthy, given the laws of physics, that shot will come out of a shotgun, travel several feet, widen out, and then come back together again and go through the right arm and then widen out again? Is that possible? No. Now, when you testified here in this hearing, this trial, you gave a 27 pellet count for the things that you chose to include in the count for shot one. Is that correct? Yes. When you testified at the pretrial hearing, however, you testified to 14 pellets in her chest, not 12. Do you remember that? I don't remember the count by frame. Do you remember counting the pellets in his chest at the pretrial hearing? Again, I don't have a specific recollection of that. And you counted here something from her left forearm. Do you remember that? Again, we discussed the shot in the indication on the x-ray on her left arm, in her left forearm. Yes, I remember discussing it. How many pellets are in her left arm? There are two, one down by the wrist and one up higher. And which one did you choose to count? I think I may have included the one in the upper arm. I can't recollect for certain. Well, are you counting the one in the upper arm? I wasn't. No. I counted in either case. In response to your question, I haven't. I am very comfortable adopting Dr. Lawrence's counts. But if you want to put the x-ray back up, I can show you the various pellets that I counted there and the ones I have questions about. Well, just to indicate again, you did all these charts and you testified at that pretrial hearing without ever knowing there was a Dr. Lawrence on the face of this earth. Isn't that correct? Yes. So you went ahead and did your calculations and had your theories about the shots without relying on any medical expert at all, correct? That's correct. And I am asking you now, not Dr. Lawrence, which pellet did you include from her left arm in your shot one? Okay, I have the x-rays if you need to look at them. Yeah, I do. Here, Dr. McCarthy, this is 172. It's already in evidence. Okay. That appears to be the x-ray of her left forearm. Right. And there are two. Wait for a question. Okay. Are there two pellets observable in that arm? Yes, there is clearly a whole pellet in the lower arm, and then we got the indication of it's certainly part of a pellet in the upper arm, but it's of a different size. Well, it could be distorted and facing the x-ray machine at an angle, could it not? Yes, it could. And so it could be a whole pellet and not a fragment, could it not? That's correct. And which one did you count? The upper one, I believe, whatever my testimony was, but my recollection is the upper one. And why didn't you count the lower one? Because of the distance from the pattern. Again, we talked about moving the hand up, the left arm into the proximity of the breast, and indeed there is some coroner photograph showing that, but at some point in time, I don't think either Dr. Lawrence or I were comfortable moving that pellet up into this count. Well, Dr. McCarthy, do you believe that Dr. Lawrence included the upper arm pellet in association with the breast? Is that what you think? I guess I don't recollect his testimony well enough to indicate which one he counted. Well, what if I were to ask you to assume that in fact he testified it was the lower pellet that was associated with the breast wounds and not the upper one? Fine, whatever he associated. That's fine. Why don't you take a look at the photograph, sorry. Are we at 301, Your Honor, or beyond that? The court says 301 is the next exhibit number. Ms. Abramson says the record should reflect I am marking a chart that I have labeled 1B as evidence item 301. Can you see this, Dr. McCarthy, or shall we, if I tilt it, the jurors won't be able to see it? I can see it to start with. If I need, I will come down. Look at the chart. On the far left, there are two visualizations of her left forearm in affiliation with her left breast, correct? Yes. And the one on the top just shows the forearm and the breast and some further beyond the wrist, correct? Yes. The lower one, however, shows the forearm, the breast, below the breast, and just something right at the rib cage. Do you see that? Not from here, if you want me to testify about it. Why don't you step down and look at the lower photograph? I'm sorry, you're a prisoner. Why don't you look at the scale? Do you see the scale? Yes. Do you see right to the left of the scale? Yes. Does there appear to be something on the skin? Yes. Okay, you can resume the witness stand. Now, I ask you, does it appear that what you see on the skin in the lower photograph next to the scale is also what you see what you just see at the edge of the upper photograph near the wrist? See near the little dark spot. Let me just point it out for a moment. This, and she points. Do you see the hand is here, and then there is this defect? Would you like to step down? Yeah, the court says go ahead. Ms. Abramson says, I am trying to orient you. You see this photograph, you see these defects, you see his dark spot, that lighter one? Yes, yeah. You see this photograph. It looks like the same dark spots. It does. Okay. Now you indicated that you didn't think the lower pellet in the x-ray would line up with the breast. Is that right? I think it would. Well, let me put it this way. As I stated in my pretrial testimony, I am undecided on this. Well, here is approximately And this is not really at the wrist. It appears to be some inches above the wrist, does it not? The defect? It's above the wrist, yes. Some inches above the wrist. A few, perhaps. So, just as these pellet defects on her forearm are a few inches above her wrist, correct? Clearly, they are a few inches above the wrist. It's just, I am uncomfortable leaving the implication it is the same few inches. It may be that that indication matches up with these defects. I am uncomfortable testifying to that or leaving that implication. How many defects are on her left forearm? I would have to recount from here. You don't remember? My memory, I do not. I would have to recount them in the photograph. Can we agree more than two? Yes. But there is only one pellet in that area of her arm, correct? Yes. Do you have any reason to doubt that pellets inside the arm can move upward, depending on whether or not they strike bone or are deflected? Pellets can move when they strike bone, yes, and can be deflected by bone. Typically, when that happens, as we see, that's not what she asked. Well, I would object to anything beyond that, Your Honor. First of all, as beyond his expertise, but non responsive. The court says you asked him the question. Samerson says, well, he is offering all these opinions. Court says, wait, you asked the question. Ms. Abramson says, in any event, you don't understand, of course, that both Dr. Lawrence and Dr. Golden are associating these forearm wounds with the breast wounds. They have certainly raised that question of whether they are associated. Do you think they're only raising a question, or do you think they have indicated that they are associated? I think the coroner thought they were possibly associated. I would have to read how certain his language was. And Dr. Lawrence indicated he believed they were associated. I believe that's what he said. So, are you disagreeing with him and discounting the bottom pellet? No, those are two different questions. One can agree with the association of those wounds and still attribute the lower pellet to another shot. But the lower pellet is what Dr. Lawrence attributed to this shot, and you have to rely on Dr. Lawrence. You understand that, don't you? Objection argumentative assumes facts not in evidence. The court says it's also three separate questions there. Stevenson says, all right. So you're rejecting Dr. Lawrence's testimony that he believed that the lower pellet was associated with the breast wounds. No. As I indicated before, I was more than willing to adopt Dr. Lawrence's pellet count. So the lower pellet count, not the pellet attribution. Are you accepting his pellet attribution? It was close enough to what I thought independently. The difference is not worth arguing about. I'm not arguing, doctor. I was asking questions. Objection, argumentative, motion to strike. The court says objection is sustained, motion to strike is granted. The question is, are you accepting Dr. Lawrence's attribution of the lower pellet to the breast wounds? I am comfortable with this. It's not the attribution that I made. Well, I don't understand. Are you still striking? I'm sorry, are you still sticking by your attribution then? That's the question. No, my attribution was as my attribution was. I was comfortable with his attribution. So are you accepting it and giving up yours? No, I was certain to begin with, or I was uncertain to begin with, and I remain so. So, so you are uncertain. Yes. I can't even imagine how frustrated Leslie is trying to get these answers from this jackwagon because he is just not, he's evading pretty much everything. It's like pulling teeth just to get an answer out of him. And she has to ask 14 questions several different ways to get to the answer. I'd be pulling my hair out by now. And we're only 30 minutes into the day. All right, so she continues on. Are you uncertain about both of these pellets, or are you only uncertain about one of them? In honesty, I would have to be uncertain about both of them. So you could count both of them in shot one. Then, if you're uncertain, they could have come from your shot one. Is that correct? I'm not comfortable doing that. Of course you're not. Well, if you're not comfortable about which shot they're coming from, they could have come from one, correct? No, you've only got so many pellets in a shotgun round. You come along and you have pellets that you have higher confidence come from a shot, and other pellets that you have lower confidence, and you go through. And I did indeed go through these shots, the shot geometries, and look at the likelihood of the other pellets. Your Honor, I'm going to object to everything after the first sentence as non-responsive. Court says the entire answer is stricken. You may re-ask the question or ask another one. Now, Dr. McCarthy, there are only so many pellets in a shot shell, right? Correct. So, if there are only so many here, that proves that one is wrong, correct? No, it would, I believe, call into question your attribution of pellets. So, you could not possibly be wrong. Only the attribution of pellets could be wrong. Is that what you're saying? No, I believe the evidence of the geometry of the shot is pretty compelling. The I believe that is a reasonable approach to the count. Your Honor, I'm going to object as non-responsive after the word no. Court says, well, he has a right to explain his answer, so overruled. You may continue your answer. The witness says, I believe a reasonable attribution of the shot confirms it. Your attribution of the shot, or Dr. Lawrence's, but nobody else's, is that correct? Objection vague as to who else counsel is referring to. Sustained. In any event, the reason you are not attributing both pellets in her left arm to this shot is because that would prove your theory wrong. Isn't that true? No. You have answered the question. Objection, Your Honor. May the witness finish his answer. It's a yes or no. The court says you may explain your answer. The witness says whether the indications in all the x-rays are full pellets or partial pellets, or whether we had a shot that had 27 or 28 pellets is not known to enough precision to say that the shot count can discount or confirm totally. Now, if you end up with 35 or something like that, then they obviously didn't come from the same shot. Do you think 32 came from the same shot? 32 could? No. 33? No. 34? No, too heavy. 29? I think 29 is too heavy and too big. But you think 28 is okay? We have opened up no fours and, we have opened up number fours and found 28. They did, remember, they opened up a couple shells and counted the pellets inside. 28 was the max number. Let's see if we can get to 30 then. Objection, argumentative, Your Honor, motion to strike. Sustained to counsel's remark as to let's see if we can get to 30. Now, if you counted all the pellets, let's assume hypothetically we are counting all from the left arm, so we're at 28. Now, if you count all the pellets that are observable in her chest, you you left these two out, didn't you? That the two that are shown here that appear to be on the right side. That is correct. Even though the only holes on her chest are in the left, correct? The holes that could possibly be affiliated with it are these two holes that appear in the photograph on 301. Isn't that right? To answer your question, I would have to go back over the chest autopsy photos. So you don't know? Is that your answer? As I sit here, that is correct. All right. And you do understand, based on the photographs, for example, given the center photograph on 295, that her body was lying on her right side for some period of time before the wound was x-rayed in the coroner's office. Yes. And and do you have any knowledge at all about whether pellets inside the chest cavity can move? The indication that Dr. Lawrence gave about that, or that's not a question or an answer, he just said the indication that Dr. Lawrence gave about that. She says, and he indicated they could, correct? Yes. They could move based on one of the laws of physics, gravity and buoyancy. And so, what basis do you have, to eliminate those two pellets or to eliminate those two holes? I didn't eliminate either. First of all, the defects that you're pointing to on the lower chest, I have looked at through some magnification, and I couldn't resolve that it was a hole. But secondly, Dr. Lawrence didn't adopt those pellets either. To get to, he said he didn't know. Understood, I didn't envision certainly pellets can move in the chest cavity. It would require those pellets to move across the chest cavity out of one side and into the other. But you have described Dr. McCarthy this blast as left to right. Correct. And so that would explain, wouldn't it, pellets moving across the chest from left to right. I don't believe the remaining, as I have indicated, the remaining energy of the pellets was such it would penetrate through that much body tissue. There is no tissue inside. What body tissue is inside the chest cavity besides lungs? Well, you would have to defeat the wall of the chest cavity, the muscles which surround the rib cage, which cause debriding. Then you have to defeat the lung. Then you would have to go in between the two lungs and get over into the other lung. But we know the pellets defeated the muscles around the chest wall, got into the chest cavity, and punctured the lung in at least 8 places. Is that right? That's a known. Yes. And you think it would be difficult for a pellet to travel lung to lung through a couple more? Yeah. Do you think lung tissue is somewhat fibrous and tough to get through? No, lung tissue is much easier to get through than tissue that is primarily dense and solid because it's got air gaps in it, but you have to get out and get in. But if you're wrong about low velocity, none of that has any significance. Isn't that true? If this is not a low velocity shot at all, then there is no limitation on where the pellets could go. Isn't that true? It's still, even if it is a full velocity shot, one, Mr. Khan says, Your Honor, may the witness finish his answer. Ms. Abramson says, I think it was about to be non responsive. The court says, I can't evaluate that until I have heard it. The witness says, secondly, the degree of penetration in a group, if they arrived or with a common energy, you would expect it to be somewhat similar. Ms. Abramson says, but you have no way of knowing if pellets arrived with a common energy unless it's a full hit, a full load, direct full hit, correct? You're correct. My testimony is the reverse of that, just exactly what you said. A full load shot column coming out will produce a group of pellets that have more or less the same energy. You don't know what the energy entering on any of these pellets were, do you? The ones in her chest. Well, I know they're above like 200 foot per second, or they wouldn't have penetrated, but I can't give you the precise energy contents of the pellets upon impact. That is correct. So you don't know. They all had the same energy. I don't believe they did. So some could have traveled further than others. I believe they did. Now, if those two pellets in her chest had been included in the count, we'd be at 30, wouldn't we? We have 28 for the second one in her left arm and two more for those. Do you want to go over the count? Well, first, to confirm and change a number, I would have to again understand. Well, let's go over the count. Okay. You testified there with 5 in the left elbow, right? Yes. You testified there were 12 in the chest instead of 14, right? Boy. What? Well, it's right in front of you, Dr. McCarthy. Do you want to count them again? Yeah, but I didn't just make a casual count. I spent some time looking at whether, I can recount what's on the x-ray. What kind of answer is that? And you don't remember what the count was you testified to 2 days ago. Is that what you're saying? No, no. I remember 2 days ago I testified to Dr. Lawrence's counts. Now there was a diagram of Dr. Lawrence's. You've done your own count? Mr. Khan says, Objection, Your Honor. May the witness finish his answer. The court says, Are you referring to the x-ray that Dr. Lawrence used or some other document? The witness says, I remember going through Dr. Lawrence's count by x-ray and my merely confirming what his count numbers were, and my recollection is his chest count was 12. Yes. And then there were 9 in the right arm of Mr. Menendez. Objection assumes facts, not in evidence. That was the count, correct? The court says, "Are you asking what he testified to previously?" Ms. Abramson says, "Yes, Your Honor." The witness says, "Again, as I sit here, that is my recollection." All right. And then there was one you counted from her left forearm. Yes. Okay. Now, can we add those up to 27? I mean, that does strike me as adding up to 27. That's because it does add up to 27, right? Okay. Objection, argumentative, overruled. I mean, she needed to get him to say it. He's being evasive even in saying, yes, it's 27. Like he can't even just come out and say, yeah, it's 27. No, he has to be like, it might be 27. It could be. I think so. Whatever. All right, so overruled. Ms. Abramson says, now if we add to that the other one in her left arm, we're at 28, correct? That would make it 28. If we add the 2 in her chest, we're at 30, correct? 30, correct. And if we add the one in his chest that Dr. Golden says is associated with his upper arm wound, we're at 31, correct? You would be at 31 if you allege those, yes. And you will concede, will you not, Dr. McCarthy, that 31 is not one round of ammunition? I would find it extremely unlikely. Is that correct? 31 does not compact in a round. Like I said, I can't say for certain it's never happened. I just find it extremely unlikely. Thank you. So it must have been 2 shots, perhaps. But it's not even all the pellets. If it was 2 shots, some of the pellets from those 2 shots did escape and didn't land on an individual because it wouldn't be enough for 2. See what I'm saying? So it was 2 shots. It had to be 2 shots, or very likely, according to him, very likely 2 shots, if we take his word for that. But he kind of sucks as an expert. Um, like I say, I can't say for certain it's never happened, but it's extremely unlikely. I just find it extremely unlikely. Thank you. Now, turning to the pretrial hearing, I'll get it in a moment. I have my okay, can't talk. Let me start over. Now, turning to the pretrial hearing, I'll get it in a minute. I have given myself the wrong page. Okay, never mind. Now, is it your opinion, Dr. McCarthy, with respect to which is the entry and which is the exit wounds to Mr. Menendez's right arm, that it really doesn't matter for your purposes which is which? I'm a little uncomfortable with doesn't matter. I think that the wounds could be accounted for in reverse direction, but it requires a lot more specialized physical reorientation of Jose for it to make sense. A more specialized physical orientation means he would have to rotate his arm in a way that people would usually not naturally do, such as I am demonstrating right now, correct? Close. If you imagined him bringing the arm around to shield Mary, then you could rotate the arm and make it back to front. So you imagine that he was shielding Mary. That's new. Is that what you imagine, or is that what you'd like to say in front of the jury? That's a good question. Objection, vague as to the form of the question. The court says, well, it's argumentative as phrased. You don't know that he was shielding Mary. You don't know what these people were doing, do you? Well, no, I do not know. Thank you. What they were doing. Now, with respect to the arm, in order to sustain your one way or your shot one as having the upper arm part of that shot pattern, if you are wrong about the entry and exit, then your explanations in his arm is rotated all the way around to where the lateral aspect is exposed in the way I am demonstrating. It's turned all the way forward so that the palm is pointing towards the back. Is that correct? I'm not comfortable necessarily with your rotation. This is why we needed a biomechanical engineer, not a mechanical engineer, because he's not comfortable with any of these things. I think he's also a paid expert because he did these diagrams with very little scientific proof of anything. Oh, I think he was just a paid expert. Oh, you want me to make diagrams? Sure. You gonna pay me? Sure. It's ridiculous. Anyways, so he says he's not comfortable with that rotation. He's not comfortable with anything, pretty much. Well, that's as much as my arm would go, she says. Generally, you'd be looking at some maneuver like that if that rotation is going to occur. I just don't, it's possible, I just don't think that's the most likely. So you don't really accept that. You don't really believe that's what happened. Is that correct? I don't think that the most likely. Now, what? Let me go back to the illustration for a second. Okay, we're fine. Also, I need these two. Mr. Levin, can you put this where 295 is for the moment? All right, I don't believe, Dr. McCarthy, that you have, in describing any of your 12 shot hypotheses, accounted for any wounds whatsoever to the outside, if you will. I believe that's the dorsal aspect of your ulnar side, whatever that is, of Mr. Menendez's right forearm. Have you? Do you know what part I'm talking about? Yes, I was actually thinking about your question. I wasn't confused over the geometry. I did not, in my direct testimony, make a specific attribution to the indications you see there. Here, here's the pointer. You know I am talking about the middle picture on 301, the middle picture. That's right, you were talking about these indications, any points. I am talking about those indications, yes. Yes, and I have looked at those under. The question was, have you illustrated them in any way? No. And as you indicated, you did not testify about them in any way in your direct examination. Is that right? That is correct. Is it an accurate statement to say, Dr. McCarthy, that nothing about a wound, the appearance or location of a wound in an arm, necessarily tells you something about the position of the person who was shot? I'm comfortable with necessarily. I mean, it doesn't. You can put the body in a number of positions and shoot it and produce the same geometry. Is that, you agree with that statement, do you not? Yes. In fact, that's the statement you made at the pretrial hearing, was it not? I don't remember specifically, but I agree with that. And would you also agree that there is nothing about the wounds on Mr. Menendez's arms, either one of them, that make it possible for him to have received them standing up? If you just looked at his wounds in isolation apart from the rest of the sequence and the scene, you are correct. Well, in fact, there is nothing about her chest wound that makes it impossible for it to have been received standing up, as Dr. Lawrence testified. Take that wound out of the scene and out of the sequence, and you are correct. In fact, there is nothing, according to Dr. Lawrence's testimony, about the wounds that the coroner calls number 2 and 3, her right face, and the other wound, her mandible and clavicle, that would not have been inflicted standing up. Isn't that true? Again, I'll agree, but it now requires a more torturous shooting geometry. More torturous for you to put it all in a neat picture, correct? No, you've got to still hit her with pellets under the chin and you have to produce the elongated indications. I mean, you have to make it come out right. But so then you would have to shoot really low. Dr. McCarthy, how it happened is how it happened, correct? Yes. Objection. There is only one, I don't know how to say that word, one truth about how it happened. Correct. And the permutations, God, I can't talk today, sorry. The permutations of two people being shot by two shotguns and 12 rounds, there are many, many, many possible combinations, are there not? That will produce all these wounds in this evidentiary scene? No. Well, we'll get to the evidence at the scene in a minute, but there are innumerable numbers of ways that two people can be hit with two shotguns. Would you agree with that? Yes. Dr. Lawrence testified there was nothing in this medical evidence that ruled out her receiving the shots to the mandible clavicle while she was standing. Isn't that right? I believe that's what he said. I believe he testified to something like that. Yes. Now, you have used the term chin. Is that the coroner's term? No, I think he uses mandible. Is the mandible the same thing as the chin? No, the chin is what we see, the mandible is the bone inside it. It's also the bone to the side of it, isn't it? Or is it not? Well, it's definitely, it goes around the side. Yes. Are you saying that if I stood here right now with a shotgun, I couldn't hit you in the chin with you in the position you're in and me in the position I am in? You could hit me in the chin, but you'd have, well, I have more of a double chin, but you would have difficulty hitting me underneath the chin. Would you please point your finger there again? The witness does. Now, you moved it, Dr. McCarthy. How is that? Or how is that? He says, and he must have adjusted it and indicates a different spot. Well, that's fine. You have made like a little basket with your fingers over the right side mandible area, correct? Where I'm holding mine right now. I think mine were a little lower. What I would indicate is those defects underneath the chin. We will get to the photo. It is your impression there are defects under the chin in the area I am now pointing to with the chin raised, the soft area under the bone beneath the bone. No, close to where your finger is now. So my finger is behind the bone now. Is that what you're saying? It's behind the bone. I would have to look at the photograph to be that precise for you. We'll get to talking about that when we get to the shot that you ascribe to that. But in any event, Dr. Lawrence did not indicate that that had to be administered while she was lying flat on her back. Correct? Correct. In fact, with respect to everything you have attributed in shot one, Dr. Lawrence testified that all could have occurred while both of them were standing, correct? I just don't recall that question and answer, that Q&A. Maybe you were on the phone or doing something. Now, Dr. McCarthy, with respect to what you're calling shot one, do you know how many conclusions you have come to in shot one that are at direct variance with Dr. Golden's opinions as expressed in the autopsy reports? The first one or with all the revisions? With all of well, let me ask you this. He revised to the best of your knowledge by re-examining photographs, correct? He didn't have the bodies anymore, so he must have examined photographs or perhaps other evidence. And he did have the bodies once. Yes. And he does take notes, correct? He did at the time that I met with him. He didn't take notes of your conversation, but you did see, well, as part of, he did. He said he did. He did at the time that I met him. So well, as part of the autopsy report, did you see the notes all over the diagrams there? Yes. And you testified yesterday there was another coroner, another medical examiner at the meeting that you had with Dr. Golden that when you were discussing the upper right arm. Yes. And that doctor, would it be fair to say, was more vehement? Strike that. Was that doctor more vehement with you in disagreeing with you about the upper arm? He was very professional. And that was Dr. Sherry, correct? I believe so. And do you know how long Dr. Sherry has been a medical examiner for the county? Objection calls for hearsay, overruled. The witness says, I do not. Do you know how many autopsies he has performed? I do not. Do you know how many multiple injury shotguns cases he has testified about? I do not. So you disagree with him also, though. I think it is less likely that he is correct than the wounds in the direction that indicate yes. So you know more. So you know more with no medical training Then 2 experienced medical examiners for the County of Los Angeles. Is that what you are saying? Oh my, no. But these people, Mr. Khan says, Your Honor, may the witness finish his answer. Ms. Abramson says, I'll focus the answer. The court says the witness is in the process of answering the question. Well, it's a yes or no, sir. And this judge keeps doing this and it's driving me crazy. On cross-examination, this is Leslie's time to ask the questions. And if she wants a yes or no from someone, she doesn't she has a right to be like, "Okay, you've answered the question, next question." And then if the state wants to come back to those items, they can. They should be able to bring it up. It's on them to bring it up. Leslie is doing what she should be doing, getting the witness to say, yes or no, and then she should be like, "Well, that's enough. Like you've answered the question. Next, let me ask the next question." She should be leading it with the questions, and yet she's not allowed to because the witness is trying to take over the courtroom and the judge is allowing him to by letting him answer these questions in full, which I think is inappropriate and ridiculous. Anyways, having said that, that annoyed me. The witness says, From what I know, these people are doing like 4 autopsies a day. So here I have multiple months to study the evidence around the case, and they are doing these things one right after another. I mean, it's not fair to them. I mean, I think to say that they can look at each of these cases with anything close to the time that I did. But these people know what they're doing, and they know human anatomy much better than you, sir. So they've been doing autopsies, I'm sure, their whole lives or their whole adult careers. And they know what they're doing. They don't need to spend a ton of time on the case because they only need to examine it once, take their notes, do a thorough examination up front the first time, and then they're finished. This guy can study and study and study, and it's not going to make him an expert in biomechanical engineering, which is what really is the expert that is needed in this, not this guy, as I've been saying from the start of his testimony. Ms. Abramson says, but they have gone back and looked at it, sir, haven't they, Dr. McCarthy? But they are still under the tremendous pressure. It was clear, even just to take the time for our meeting. I mean, they are under some serious time pressure. Gee, they took the time for a meeting with us, too, for many hours. They seem to have the time, wouldn't you agree? Objection, assumes facts not in evidence. The court says sustained. Do you know that they took the time to have a meeting with the prosecutors in July? Are you aware of that? I am not aware of what meeting they had with the prosecutors. And you are not aware of how much time they took to have a meeting with the defense attorneys? I do not. And you do not know how much time Dr. Golden took to have a meeting with Dr. Fackler? I do not. And you don't know how much time it took Dr. Golden to review all the facts and write his supplemental report in September, do you? I do not. So you think you're too rushed? You think that they are too rushed to think, or that they would just rush a job and not do a thorough investigation? He says that's not my testimony either. It's just they're under the time pressure with individual cases that doesn't afford them the luxury I have. And you have nothing to do with failure analysis. I'm sorry, but that's hilarious. She's just like, so you have nothing else on your plate but hours and hours on end just to sit and look at the evidence of this case, right? Is that what you're saying too? Like you're not rushed for time on other things. This is all you do 24/7. I love her. Like she is so witty and on the spot with these questions because she played like this is why I love her. She goes off of the questions or the answers. Like some attorneys will just spit questions and not really hear the answer of the witness. She does both. She hears the answer. She has her whole list of questions. But if a witness goes in a tangent and something that she didn't expect, she will play off of it. She will ask a question like this, because this guy is like, oh no, they just don't have the luxury of time like I do. She's like, so you have all the time in the world? Let's discuss that. Let's get into that. And she uses it kind of as a dig at him, which I love. So sorry, let's continue. And you have nothing to do with failure analysis. The stock has slipped to $5 a share, but think about the freebie case. Is that right? Objection, argumentative, sustained. She says, started out at 20, your stock, didn't it? Objection, irrelevant, sustained. Darn, she can't get into stock. So he's got his own problems here with failure analysis, is what she's trying to get into. It's not doing so well because you're all paid hacks, apparently, and, or at least this guy is, and $5 a share versus 20. She's trying to get in the fact that this guy's company is failing. He's got his own issues to deal with his company, but yeah, he's saying he's got all the time in the world to just look at these cases. So this is brilliant maneuvering by Ms. Abramson. I keep calling her Leslie, Ms. Abramson, whatever. She's an idol in my mind. So no disrespect, however I call her, or whatever I call her. All right, so the court sustained that. Ms. Abramson says, you are supposed to be the business getter, the rainmaker, aren't you, Dr. McCarthy? Objection sustained. Well, he is. He's like the CEO, right? Do you think you would have been enlisted in a case with no publicity? I'll withdraw the question, Your Honor. Mr. Khan says, Your Honor, may the witness answer the question. The witness says, I can honestly say I had no appreciation of the publicity issue when I agreed to do a favor for a friend. So he's only here for a favor, he says. So what does that mean? You're here for a favor, so you're not testifying without a bias? Is that the case? So a year ago, you had never heard of the Menendez case. Is that what you're saying? I had heard of the case, but I guess I had never heard of any witness who had testified in it. It never would occur to me that I would hear about them now. So you never heard about the brothers Menendez testifying. Of course, you hear about the defendants, but I never heard about any of the experts. So it never occurred to me anybody would hear about the experts. Never heard about any controversy about the physical evidence. Is that true? As I sit here, I don't recollect any controversies. That's true. And that's because until you showed up, there wasn't any controversy about it. Objection assumes facts, not an evidence. Sustained. The question was, do you know how many direct disagreements your shot one has with Dr. Golden's conclusions and Dr. Sherry? Not off the top of my head, but obviously that's a function of time as they have changed their conclusions. Well, you have changed your conclusions also based on hearing Dr. Lawrence, haven't you? Objection, argumentative, overruled. He has. I don't believe so in any significance I don't believe so in any significant degree. No. But you have. So your answer can't be I don't believe I did it much. I don't believe I changed it much. Your answer is yes, I did change my answers. Maybe slightly, but yes, I did. Your answer is yes. Ms. Abramson says, well, if I told you, um, you have a disagreement concerning the angularity on the breast wounds, would you agree that you have a disagreement with him? I think we discussed that, and I don't think I have a significant disagreement. Well, he says front to back, you say left to right. Is there a disagreement there to any degree? In essence, no. Really, buddy? You are just making yourself look like a jackass. Hee haw, hee haw. This guy really is a butt munch. All right, so as I think he indicated, and I will now indicate. So you say no. Well, Mr. Khan says, Your Honor, may the witness finish his answer. The court says, yes, why don't you finish your answer? Just go ahead and take over the court. The witness says, how she is positioned on the couch, I can't put her precisely in that position. If you want to rotate her slightly towards the shooter, there is no disagreement whatsoever, and I can't position her to the accuracy. So, are you backing off on left to right across her body as you have previously testified? Well, that I drew from the coroner, so no. He said front to back, didn't he? Dr. McCarthy, front to back and left to right. Correct, which is what I have shown. And you have testified left to right and front to back. I have no problem with that. At the pretrial hearing, you only testified left to right. Isn't that true? I can't believe I ruled out front to back. I mean, clearly there is some entry, there is an angle of entry, even in my diagram. But the basic direction you said was left to right. Isn't that true? If you ask me about the direction on this diagram, it is more left to right than front to back, but I can't position her torso precisely. On that diagram, it is almost only left to right. Isn't that true? I am comfortable with that. It is more left to right than front to back, but there is a front to back component in it. He has front to back, so do you agree or disagree? There is not enough detail for me to disagree. Now, concerning the right arm of Mr. Menendez, Dr. Sherry and Dr. Golden do not believe 2 and 3 are affiliated, which is the two areas of wounding on the inner arm. Do you disagree or agree? Well, let me make sure we are following the count. You mean the individual pellet counts and the larger wounds. You don't see them on the thing that you're pointing to right now? Right now, you are pointing to 301. Go back to 295. What you see in the left-hand column in the top or middle photograph. Yes, they do not believe they are affiliated. Do you agree or disagree? I disagree. Dr. Golden and Dr. Sherry, based on Dr. Golden's report and Dr. Sherry's comments to you at the meeting, do not agree with you that what you're seeing on 295, the large defect, is an entry wound. They believe that's an exit, correct? Correct. And you're aware from Dr. Golden's report that he believes that the one single pellet in Mr. Menendez's chest is also affiliated with the bruising area on his chest, correct? He associated those wounds, that pellet from the same wound number 6, yes. And you associate wound number 6 with the upper right arm, don't you? Part of your shot 1. Yes. And you don't associate that pellet, do you? I have not. That is correct. So you disagree with them on that. I don't think it likely. So you disagree with them on that. They think it's likely. Objection assumes facts not in evidence. Rephrase the question, says the court. Well, their conclusion, it's affiliated. Objection, compound, and calls for a conclusion as to what Dr. Sherry said. The court says, why don't you rephrase it? Dr. Golden has affiliated that wound in the chest with the right arm exit wound that is observed in those photos and the marks on the right side of the chest, correct? Most recently, yes. Well, you don't know what he didn't write about it in the first time around. Isn't that true? He didn't affiliate it with anything else because he didn't mention it. Didn't mention it? You don't remember? I don't remember if he didn't mention it. So whenever he affiliates it, he's affiliating it and you disagree. Is that correct? Disagree is awfully strong. I just don't think it likely. So you disagree. He affiliates them. You don't, right? I Mr. Khan says assumes facts not in evidence that he does, in fact, affiliate the two of them. Ms. Abramson says, I read it. The court says the witness has already answered, so ask him another question. I'll move on, Your Honor. Thank you. Let's go to what you call 2. The court says, okay, if we're moving into the second shot here in the sequence, we will take our recess and get the things set up so we can do it without too much hazard to the jurors. We'll be in recess. Don't discuss the matter with anyone. Don't form any final opinions about it. We'll resume in 15 minutes. Okay, we'll pause there. I was just going to see if they had any arguments. No, they don't really. So we're going to pause there and we will we will continue Monday with the rest of his testimony. So thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I will see you in the next one. Take care. Bye, guys.